We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410, KERI, the Christian station, and now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. So what do you think of Gary Bauer?
Gary's an interesting individual. I'd love to talk to him for a lot longer.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy.
I'm not sure I agree with all of his views, but he's a pretty conservative individual, and as I said, I'm pretty liberal.
Yeah. And any second now, the studio roof is going to open up and you're going to be gone. Well, our next guest, is somebody that I had the pleasure of interviewing a couple months ago. Really, really enjoyed it. We had an interesting conversation. Rabbi Ganz, who wrote a great book called Uncommon Sense, the Talmud's Timeless Solutions to Political and Social Challenges. And he wrote an interesting article that we'll talk about sometime in the next couple of minutes. Rabbi, welcome back to Taking Care of Business.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Look forward to the time we'll spend on the air.
Yeah, we had a great interview last time we had you on the air, so we're going to have a little fun talking about some issues, some current issues. I wanted to get into, what's recently, since the last time you and I talked, what's been happening in the Middle East. What do you think of what's happened in Syria?
Oh my goodness! I guess to think anything about what's happening in Syria, the first prerequisite is that you have to know what's going on in Syria. And that's probably part of the problem. It's very hard to know what's going on, like who's doing what and what's going to happen. Clearly, it seems that the U.S. is not likely to be attacking, which I think is a good thing. And I don't know. I don't think that we can solve all of the world's problems, and I think Syria is one of them. But you just have to let it play itself out.
Well, we certainly can't solve the problems with the administration we currently have in place.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of the strike never made sense to me, because once you strike, you get involved. What do you expect to accomplish? What's going to happen? I wrote in my article that if you do a minimal slap on the hand, it accomplishes very little. They're used to bombings. It doesn't mean that much to them. And I didn't write this, but I'm sure that the next thing that'll be is that there'll be a picture of a Syrian baby that was killed, not necessarily by the U.S., but they'll say it was. It'll be all over the papers, and then everyone will have another excuse to excoriate America.
Well,
if they really go, huh?
Yeah. And, it's another thought that I had when we had discussion earlier was I keep on thinking about the book written by Barbara Tuchman at the end of World War I called Guns of August. It talked about how everybody got sucked into World War I, and a couple weeks into it, everybody's going, what happened to us? And luckily, President Kennedy was reading that very book when the Cuban Missile Crisis came down, because, he looked at it and said, wait a minute, I'm not going to have this happen to us. But I think there's always that danger that, with all the alliances and everything in the Middle East, if we went into Syria, especially half-heartedly, we could be looking at World War III very easily.
Yeah.
Well, that was
World War III is of course possible. It's scary. But even without World War III, I mean, the different gangs of none of these people are democratic. They're all cutthroats, and they're fighting with each other. And when we start saying, I want to sponsor this gang of thugs, not that gang of thugs, and we'll risk our resources, human and monetary, to bring about that result, it just doesn't make any sense,
Well, the problem is they're all thugs.
Yeah. I wrote something in a previous article that kind of resonates. It's in my book also. That there's an old Jewish, piece of wisdom. They discuss a community building a synagogue, or it could be a church. The same thing would be, would hold true. So it's it's a common thing. You're building a new structure, and it's almost ready. You think it's going to be ready. The planning is good, and then someone says, "Well, let's wreck the old one. We don't need it." So the advice given is don't get rid of the old one until you're sure that you have the new one that's going to be there and better. Because you never know. It may not be better. It may not be completed. It may not this. It may not that. So, when you talk about deposing somebody like Bashar Assad, who's a terrible guy, but don't do it unless you know that you have something better. You know,
So
there's no.
So the grass is
Sorry.
always greener on the other side until you get there.
Yeah. I wrote also that this is what Jimmy Carter did with the Shah of Iran back in the 70s.
That's right.
He was going around spouting righteous talk about how evil the Shah is. We have to get rid of him. We have to get rid of him. We have to get rid of him. So his vision prevailed, and they got rid of him. But they ended up getting someone that was infinitely worse. That has been destabilizing the world ever since. But, why do that?
Our guest by phone, author Rabbi Ganz, author of Uncommon Sense, the Talmud's Timeless Solutions to Political and Social Challenges. Well, Rabbi, the one thing that really interested me in an article you wrote recently, and I thought it was kind of timely, and that's one reason why I wanted you back so soon, is you wrote an article about Iran saying that you think we should go into Iran. Could you explain that?
Well, I started the article off by saying we shouldn't go into Syria, which I think most people are now sympathetic toward. Like, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. But I do feel that where they should be flexing American might is with Iran, because Iran does threaten the West, unlike Syria. It has these global jihadist activities that it sponsors. They're involved. It's almost like any time there's a good murder of some innocent person, Iran's bloody hands are involved with it. These guys are terrible. And they're building a nuclear weapon, and everybody knows about it, and they're not doing anything about it. So, if you want to do a bombing someplace, bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran immediately. Get rid of it. Why wait until they have the ability to destabilize and threaten the entire world? That makes no sense to me. I can't understand. They're talking about Syria. Talk about Iran and let them do it immediately.
Well, do you think if Israel was to go into Iran, which I think is a good possibility, that under this administration we would support Israel?
This administration, I don't know. It's very hard to sit in judgment when we're not there and party to what they're thinking and what they're not thinking, but it's really hard to know what they're going to do. I don't see a coherent policy toward Israel, toward the Middle East, toward almost anything, really. And I don't know what they will do. But what they should do is they should do it. That they have the type of weaponry that Israel doesn't have. They have these stealth bombers that can go in and out of Iran unseen. They have these bunker-busting bombs. And do it. Why wait? Why wait? I wrote in my article that when in the 30s, when Hitler was arming himself, they could have taken him out very easily. So the pacifism of Neville Chamberlain in England, in appeasing him, is what led to World War II and about 50 million casualties. It would have been a relatively easy thing to just attack Germany. France was armed to the teeth. England was well armed, and they were just emerging from the sanctions against building weapons. And he was already bellicose. Hitler talking about conquering Europe. Then they could have easily defeated him. So what did they do? They waited until he was armed to the teeth, and then there was such a catastrophe, an unnecessary catastrophe. Why risk an unnecessary catastrophe by not bombing Iran? I don't get it.
So when we come back from the break, let's pick up there. But you're basically saying that we should attack Iran now and not wait until they're too powerful.
Not wait till they have a nuclear weapon.
Okay.
Because we should attack. I'm not talking about going to war with Iran. I'm talking about removing their bomb-making capacity.
Okay,
it can be done, I think, fairly easily.
Okay, let's pick up there when we come back, okay?
Sure.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.